Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff After Hours, Real Crime Stories. And I'm your host, Bill Cannon. I'm a retired 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I retired out of Manhattan North Homicide Squad as a detective sergeant. And tonight we have a really special guest. She's the author of a book called Behind Blue Curtains, and her name is Lizzy Hershberger. And this actually, even though it's an unusual topic, we're going to talk about her book, it is a real crime story, because there was a crime committed here. And we're going to talk to Lizzy about that. And she's going to tell us all about her life as an Amish girl, and then, of course, getting out of that life. Anyway, Lizzy, without any further ado, let me welcome you to the show. Welcome, Lizzy Hershberger.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
It's a pleasure. I somehow got notified by your publicist when you're in regards to your book, and I said, "Oh, wow, that would be a really interesting person to interview." And I jumped right on it. I notified your publicist, and that's how you got here, which is pretty amazing.
Yes, I appreciate you and taking the time to read the book. That is really very, very nice of you.
Well, Lizzy, I get people send me books all the time, and I don't have the time to read them. Usually they skim them, but I started reading your book, and I couldn't put it down. It was so very interesting, and I read the whole thing, which is, as I said, I don't normally do. Mm-hmm. So, Lizzy, without any further ado, let's get into your story. You grew up in Minnesota, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
As part of an Amish family. You tell the story.
Yeah. So in like southeastern Minnesota, and I was just a baby when I moved there. My grandpa started the community, and the community was very small at first, and then it grew to about 100 families. So now that's kind of what it is now, is about 100 families. And it is just, one of those, Amish families tend to be kind of small. I mean, some of them are larger, obviously, than that, but it gets split then into districts. So then in each district tends to have its own bishop. So.
Also, right? You had a sister and a younger brother, right?
A sister, yep, that's a year younger than I had. 3 younger brothers then. Yeah, so there's 5 of us. So I was the oldest, and we had a small, I would say we called it a small lot right next to our grandparents, and our grandparents had a farm, which was very typical back in the 70s and 80s for Amish people to have their own farms, milk cows. They would sell the milk right off at the farm in those cans, milk cans. And we had, chickens and our own pigs to butcher. And so really lived off of the land. And, I will say that is the way it was back, when I was growing up. Now, things have changed. Amish families, unfortunately, are not able to live off of the land the way they did when I was growing up. So it was I lived in a very interesting times when you could still live off the farm. And I really, got to, work hard. My first memory is, of trying to milk a cow. And, I was very young. My grandmother would teach me how to make bread, and it was so small. She would set the big bowl on a chair, and I would even have a little stool, by it to kneel the bread. And we made our own bread and clothes. And we had no electricity of any kind, no solar panels. Everything was wood heat. We had water coming into the house, but it was only cold water, and that was, drinking water. So if we wanted to take a bath, it was heat up the water, and we only did that once a week.
So you were like a Wim Hofer without even knowing it. You were the first Wim Hofers.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way.
You know what that is? My son does that. It's like it's supposed to. Yeah, they take freezing cold showers, or they jump into ice cold water, and they try to stay in there as long as possible. That's called Wim Hofing. The guy who invented his name is Wim Hof, so it's no big. But anyway, that's what that is. But that was a joke anyway. But so you were part of the Swartzentruber Amish, which prided themselves in having the least contact with any modern conveniences of any, should I call it, sect of the Amish people?
Yeah, it was so sheltered that I didn't even know there was any other Amish besides the Swartzentruber Amish that we were in, and I was told that is the only we're the only true Amish left. We have the least modern conveniences, and that will give us better, basically, rankings or better placings going to heaven, because the less you have, the more humble you are.
That's what my mother told me. I was Catholic. She said that. You know what I never understood, and if my mother's listening to this, she's in Texas now, staying with my sister. She's 87 years old, but my mother was a very, very strict Catholic. And when we had something happen that we were suffering, my mother would say, offer it up to God. And I never understood that, to what the hell that meant. What you think God likes my suffering, But that was old-time Catholicism. They believed that stuff,
It's so interesting you brought up Catholic. The Amish actually are basically a break off, or like years ago they were with the Catholic, and then they decided that the Catholics are too liberal and they wanted to have their own group. So that's really very common, similar, background teachings.
One of the things when I read the book, and it sort of makes me mad, and when people, and we'll get to even other egregious things that they did, but the part of making God a punisher, and God gonna be watching over you if you do anything wrong. God fearing is the number one, and a God punisher, and that's how they controlled you. And I find that, psychologically, that just got to destroy you.
Yeah, I think that is just something that I really have had to learn to, in my mind, change that kind of thinking, because he was just viewed as this, he's watching everything you do, and he keeps score. And whatever you do that, is wrong, then you're going to get punished for that. And it was punished from your parents, plus get punishment from God, whatever he tends to see fit. And it's a very unfortunate thing. And one of the things that I've discussed with other people is the way they view the Amish as these Christian, God-fearing people. But underneath, lies this just whole religious component of things. And it's just it's very different, I think, when you get down to really the nitty-gritty of who the Amish, the ones that I grew up with. There's some very good ones, very good God-fearing ones. I have an uncle who's a bishop, and there's other people in the community, great people. But then there is just this, it's a community, I feel like, that is perfect for a pedophile to live in, because you are so closed off from the outside world. And you do not, when I was growing up, you do not call the police. That was I don't even remember anybody even ever calling the police for anything, whether it was somebody, like my dad had a sawmill, and I remember once in a while things would get stolen, or people would take things. He never called to make a police report. You just didn't do that. You forgave them, and you just said, okay, well, they must have needed it more than I did, and you left it at that.
Well, I read in your book how that if there was a big disagreement among Amish people that couldn't be resolved, the one family would just leave. They would move away.
Yes.
That sounds pretty bizarre too, right? Or we can't work this out, so we're just going to move on. We're going to get out of here, right?
And they definitely believe in, like, you would never take, one Amish would never take another Amish man to court for, like, suing him for, if he owed him money or something, so therefore they resolved all their problems. They tried to resolve all their problems with the church. And then if you couldn't, and you just had a disagreement, that is the way they fixed it. They moved away and started a new community often.
Now, Lizzy, there's the book on the screen, Behind Blue Curtains. And you call it a true crime memoir of an Amish woman's survival, escape, and pursuit of justice. But the term behind blue curtains is more than just a term. It's sort of a metaphor for life. And the blue curtains are covering up all the horrible things that happen behind those blue curtains. Am I right?
Yes. And then and you read the book. So it's such the point of the blue curtains was to show how everything, there's rules for everything, including the color of your curtains. It has to be a certain color. And my mother was just she was very spirited, I will say, and she loved to push the rules a little bit. And if she wanted to have, them be a little bit thicker, a little bit lighter blue, it was just an example of how you got in trouble with the preachers for the color of your curtains. Then it went all the way down to, what you ate and what you did. And, it's just endless. I said, there's rules for everything. And one of the hardest things was for me after I left the Amish is to be able to decide, okay, today, let's say, what am I going to eat? Because when you were growing up Amish, they just told you, this is what you're going to eat. You don't question, you don't do anything. So the to make a decision was extremely difficult. And I still struggle with that once in a while. Like, okay, what am I going to really do today? Do you know what I'm talking about?
My wife tells me what I'm going to eat. I don't. She says, this is what you're having for dinner. You like it or not. She throws it in front of me. That's actually not true. But no, I reading the book, I was just like, how could you intellectually grow in that environment? You really can't. And the part of that, and I didn't want to get to this part too fast, is that at the age of 14, they stop educating you. You're not allowed to go to school anymore because, in their words, they're afraid you'll get too worldly and you'll learn too much and you'll leave the community, which is probably very true, Our friend Molly has just arrived.
Okay.
Molly, how are you? we were like, where's Molly?
Here. Oh my God. Hey.
How are you?
She came in the.
Sorry, but I'm just going to be honest. I'm out here on a mission with a cult. So, apropos.
Well, I'd just like to introduce you. This is Molly Maeve Egan, and she is a coach. She's a sort of a spiritual advisor, right? And she helped you write your book. And I was so happy to have her on here with you because I'm sure it keeps you company here and a little, it's like having a friend with you while you're doing this, right?
Yes.
I'm sure this isn't easy to tell this tale, right?
No, she helped get the book together. Without her, it probably would most likely just still be in my notebook, because of, like we were talking about, the level of education, ended at 8th grade. And remember, my teacher was an Amish, Amish with an 8th grade education.
She was an evil Amish bitch too, that teacher. I don't pull any punches here. I mean, I think she hit you one time, right?
I don't either because, I had to keep my mouth shut and censored.
Yeah, but I don't have to do that. That's the beautiful thing about being a retired New York City cop, and a comic and an actor and have a podcast. You could say what you want,
Yeah, it was it was very, I've gotten quite a few comments about this Amish teacher, and like Molly could verify, we only put a couple stories in there. They, at that time, when the teacher had every right, she could discipline us to whatever was her choice. I mean, and it was a leather strap that she kept in her pocket, and she used it. I mean, she was not afraid to use it. We were trying to show too how anybody that's older than you has the authority to discipline you in the Amish community. So let's say, you're visiting your grandparents, they're then in authority, and they absolutely can, beat the crap out of you. It's whatever they feel.
Yeah, and you had some creepy people in that community. I tell you that, just because they were older than you, that's pretty scary. We talk about the whole mind control thing about the God-fearing and the God-punishing thing. Now add to that they won't let you out to know what the hell's going on in the outside world. I remember I loved it when you got to listen to the radio, and you liked rock and roll at an early age, right? I said, wow, look at that. She didn't even, I mean, you hear the music and it's something that's like, oh my God, it's like you see one of those little babies they can't hear and they they fix their ears and all of a sudden they can hear for the first time and they're like, oh my God, right? That's what, when I was reading that, I was thinking, wow, imagine like being so isolated, no electricity, and all of a sudden you hear rock and roll on the radio.
Yeah, and we had me and my sister, we loved it. We had one Walkman radio eventually, and we would take turns, or one of us would have one had earpiece, whatever you call it, and the other one have the other one, and we listened, and it was just like this wonderful thing, because in the Amish we were not allowed to have any musical instruments of any kind, not even the harmonica. It was nothing. The only songs that were sang was in this plain Amish or German language.
That's why you don't see any Amish rock and roll bands. They're not allowed to, to play instruments. That'd be pretty funny, though. Imagine here are the barn builders. This rock and roll band, they're taking America by storm. The barn raisers. There's someone here named Moses who says hello from the Swartzentruber house. You know that person?
What is the name?
Moses. He says hello from the Swartzentruber house.
That is somebody.
He's in the live chat. I like to shout out to some of the people in the live chat.
Yes.
We have some regulars who are with Dawn Marie. Hello. The MC's Audio. Peter Pranzo, Harlem Raiders retired lieutenant. Princess Mitch. Melody McAtee, great to have you here. Hoppy, I love that name, Hoppy. You should be in a rock and roll band too, Hoppy. Who else we got here? Scott Wagner, David Herbsman, Rachella Pranzo. Peter Pranzo's not here unless Rachella's here. Scotty Wagner, of course. Jessica Shades. Hello, everybody. Let me get back to this interview because this is the most fascinating interview, and we have to get, I hate to say it, but to the meat and potatoes of this, right? Of what the horror of this was. And you spoke briefly before about pedophilia. And I have some, I was in homicide for 10 years, but on the same floor at 3280 Broadway and 133rd Street in Broadway in Manhattan, we had Manhattan Special Victims. So because I was a boss, I would sometimes cover special victims and I'd go out with them on their jobs. And I had such great respect for the detectives and special victims because it's such a very, very difficult crime to investigate. And they were so good at their job. They were so patient and they were such great, great interviewers. And you might say, oh, why? Well, how do you know that? Because they got to the truth. They got to what was going on. And when I watched them, a lot of times, look, my guys were the best of the best. Homicide was amazing, but I always so respected the special victims detectives. Anyway, so I had some experience in sex crimes and going out on sex crimes. And you mentioned pedophilia, and you talk about, when we talk about rape, for folks that aren't in the police business, there's forcible rape, of course, and then there's something called infancy, right? And then there's also incapable of consent because of alcohol and drugs and that stuff. And besides the force that was involved in your incidents, there was also infancy because you were only 14 years old. And someone under, at least in New York State, it's under the age of 17 is unable to consent because of infancy. I don't know what it is in Minnesota, but so this was more than just, and you say pedophilia, of course it was pedophilia. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
I'll just back up a little bit when you're talking about, victims and stuff. So I volunteer with Victim Services now, and there is so much gratitude I have for all the people working with victims. Like you said, they are so, they're just special. They're special people that know how to interview and how to be there and how to comfort a victim and how to be supportive. And I am truly thankful that I ended up having a very good victim services advocate that was with me through the process of the legal system. And she inspired me to volunteer with them. And it is one of the most rewarding things that I'm doing right now. And I do that weekly. And so going back, yes, to the...
excuse me, I'm sorry, Lizzy. I realize when I take myself out of the picture, I have no sound, and I was trying to talk to you, and then you couldn't hear me.
No,
But
go ahead. You can sit on the
you're referring to Molly as your advocate and your sort of coach, correct or no?
No, actually, in our local county, we had
Okay.
victim services. Yeah, she works for victim services, and when I met her, she was just so helpful, and because I just had so little knowledge of anything, even though I had left the Amish, a long time before that, I just didn't know anything about, really what does victim services do, and how can they support you, and how can they help you prepare you for, I was preparing to go to trial. And they were just wonderful. They could, obviously the DA could talk to me, but she could explain things. And I think in almost any county, you can seek out victim services, and there is such a need for even more of them to be there. And in my county, tri-state county, actually, we can volunteer, and I took training, and so I get called, and I get called out sometimes, and it's yeah, I've really learned a lot by volunteering.
Lizzy, let's back up to, I spoke about before how at the age of 14, an Amish girl is required to stop getting educated. They take you out of school and they make you do this job called a MAUDE, M-A-U-D-E. And basically what you are is a housekeeper that works for a family that could have a young husband, a wife, kids. But talk about the perfect storm of putting a young girl in a horrendous situation for a sexual assault or sexual abuse. You want to comment on that? Molly, I'd like to hear from Molly. Molly,
yes,
would you like to comment on that?
About being a young,
a MAUDE going into this situation where she is a housekeeper, basically almost like a slave, really.
Yeah, I like to use the word indentured servitude, because she wasn't just taking care of the kids. She was milking the cows and doing farmhand work and cooking and taking care of everyone emotionally and physically, apparently. So for nothing, this was her life. So slavery, indentured servitude, call it whatever you want, but definitely in that category in my mind. But I think it took some convincing to show Lizzy that. Lizzy was still a little set in her ways when we started this, and it took some convincing that not all of this was okay, in my looking back on it.
Yeah, because it seems like the perfect way to make someone psychologically like a prisoner, almost like you know what Stockholm syndrome is, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a form of Stockholm syndrome to that, because you're identifying with your captors, and your captors are your family, your mem and your dad, right? See, I did read the book, right?
Yes, you did. Yes.
And they, they gave the little wink to the sexual abuse too. The whole community does, because it's almost like everyone knows about it, but yet they punish you more for listening to a radio than they would to have someone sexually assault you. So it's, go ahead, Molly.
A lot of cases coming out now where plain men are being arrested, and when they're asked about the rapes, they admit it. They say, I didn't know it was wrong. It's the way it's always been. And that's a direct quote. They don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, in reading that book, it's almost like they know what's going to happen to a MAUDE. They know it probably happens to every single one of them. But yet your parents are putting you in this horrendous situation because it's almost culturally accepted that that's what's going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm. And it's often, I believe without a doubt, my mom knew what was going on, and she just accepted it because that happened to her. And then unfortunately, in the book I talk about that my dad, did the same thing. He raped a hired girl too. And it's just this cycle of, it's ridiculous. I mean, and I don't understand how people think that this is acceptable behavior. I mean, yes, it maybe happens generation after generation, but at some point, like I said, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to let my daughter live like that. I mean, that is just outrageous.
Yeah, because like on one hand, they are so strict about keeping you from the evils of the outside world, but yet that's protecting them from making it an insular community, so they're not called upon by the powers that be, the law and the government, that, wait a minute, there's some horrendous shit happening in that community. And, you can't just have, look, there's religious freedom and all of that stuff. You're not going to have a bunch of stormtroopers come in and go, what's going on in here, But it's horrendous. And it's not just the Amish community. There's several other religions that have this same exact problem. And look, I mentioned I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. Horrendous, the pedophile situation in the Catholic Church, right? And how it's been hidden, and, perpetrators of the sexual abuse have been transferred and moved on. And I mean, the victims are still coming out after years and years and years later,
And speaking of that, that's one of the things that the community is so, in general, is so against me for, is that they believe that because he confessed in church about 28 years ago, that whatever he confessed to something. And so then he got punished for 6 weeks, being shunned. And therefore, after he makes his confession, or anybody confesses, after that, you are never to talk about that again. And I think that is absolutely absurd when you think about how long it takes some victims to come forward. I mean, it takes.
Well, that's where religion goes head-on collision into law. And, law says, no, that's a crime. And I mean, we'll get to your case a little later on, but suffice it to say that the person that committed these crimes against you got basically a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, we didn't talk much about what happened after the sentencing, but that's exactly what he got. It wasn't really about what would happen to him. It was about how Lizzy got to that moment. But he spent about 6 weeks in jail.
Yeah, I saw that. 45 days, it said.
Yep.
And he probably did less than that, right?
Something like that. And he's on probation for 10 years. But the unfortunate thing is that he does not have to register as a sex offender, because that law wasn't in place in 1989 when it happened, which is one of the biggest problems I have with it. Because of him being a deacon in the Amish church, we know that he has access to young girls still to this day.
And now, Lizzy, you, in the book, you said that he had raped you 24 times. Is that correct?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. 24 times is what I have in my diary. Now, the chances are that there's more than that, but that is what we could use when I reported my cases. We have it 24 times that I have this distinct red circles in my diary, and I have other things that I can reference it to. And so it is just one of those things we say 24 times, and most likely it was more.
Right. And besides that, you had some awfully creepy other guys. You had an uncle. His name was Uncle Abe, and what was his wife was creepy too. And I've an Uncle Abe, right? I was like, when you told me what he would do, he would have his penis in his pocket, right, and ask you to reach in. I mean, yeah, that's how we all think of Amish people. Yes, would you like a
piece of candy? A piece
of
candy. He bribed it with he has a piece of candy in his pocket. And I will just back up and say, okay, it wasn't his wife that was creepy. I didn't talk about his wife. It was my aunt. His sister. Oh,
it was his sister. Okay.
Yes, that's okay.
And Iva and Uncle Abe, right?
Yes, there you go. Mm-hmm. And what has become clear to me since the book was released, I've went back and talked to relatives. They've asked me to come out and talk about it. It was common knowledge that people knew that these two were involved in incest. So why didn't somebody do something about it? To me, it made it so clear, and why my aunt was always so hostile towards me, because I believe she knew that he was doing stuff to me, and obviously he was doing stuff to her too. So it's just this ridiculous thing. And what I'm appalled about is both of these, Aunt Iva and Uncle Abe, have gotten married, and they have children and grandchildren, and they have their heads stuck in the sand, and saying that nothing.
I didn't expect an Amish woman to say he's got his head up his ass. I knew you wouldn't say that. That's what we would say in New York, though, right? You're just still too holy and too nice to say that.
Yeah.
So the sinner, Bill, the sinner, will say it. And
Or
maybe even Molly from Brooklyn.
Molly
She might jump in and say it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things I don't try to. But going back to it, is what I think is so sad is that some of these, both of them have kids that have left the Amish, but yet they still have this mindset that they think that their parents didn't do anything wrong, and now they're having children and they're doing nothing, in my opinion, to educate themselves and educate these Aunt Iva and Uncle Abe's grandchildren, and they let them be around these. I mean, I would say I wouldn't even take my dog that I don't like out to Uncle Abe's for him to watch, because he's a pedophile.
Yeah, and they even had a term for the rapes called mixing a batch, right? I was like, wow, obviously if they have a term for it, everyone knows about it, right?
Yeah, that's a secret code.
Right. Hey, I'm going to go mix a batch. I'll see you guys at the barn burning later. I don't know what they say, but listen, I got to go to a quick commercial, and we'll come back and we'll get deeper into this, okay? Let me just go to this. We have a couple of sponsors. Folks, if you're looking to move out of the New York area because the taxes are too high, you hate the politics, whatever reason you want to leave, Carol Waters is a realtor in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Carol used to work as a bartender at Fitzpatrick's Hotel in Midtown. Her husband, Rob Mahan, was a police officer, NYPD, and then he rolled over to the fire department. Now Rob Mahan and Carol Waters sell real estate together down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they're two top salespeople down there. So if you're looking to move down to Myrtle Beach, even if you want a rental property, give Carol Waters a call, 914-261-6681, or you can email her at carolwaterssellsmyrtlebeach@gmail.com, and obviously the flyer is right on the screen there. If any of you guys are getting in trouble, like I know you might be, we have a great attorney. He's a big supporter of Police Off the Cuff. He's a retired police officer. His name is Joe Murray, and he's got a website, joe@jmurray-law.com. Joe Murray's a great attorney, and I highly recommend him. So if you're getting any trouble, any of you Amish people, I don't know if he'll go to Minnesota. So, but he'll handle cases. They're everywhere. There's pedophiles all over. I don't know if he wants those kind of cases, but Joe Murray's a great attorney. I told you, Lizzy, we'd have some laughs, even though we had this very, very serious, serious show. But we'll definitely have some laughs. Yeah, I mean, it's a community that, reading the book, I was just like, everyone knows about this. The whole community knows about it. Everyone's like giving that little wink. Oh yeah, you're going to mix a batch, yeah, whatever, But don't listen to the radio while you're doing it. It's like it's so crazy, And then
I
didn't want to make you guys
blue. But whatever you're doing back there is all right.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy is that, right?
Well, and I think one thing that doesn't talked about a lot is you're saying the Amish are very aware of what's going on, obviously, because they often go confess in church. And if they confess before basically they're caught, they have better, that makes them better status, less punishment. But what I also have a problem with is some of these people that live right around the Amish that we would call English people are also very aware of what's going on. And some of them refuse to sell my book because what this is doing is showing what some of these Amish people are doing. And this, a lot of the communities, people are bringing lots of tourism money in, and this is, so they want to keep the Amish name as these good, wonderful people that make furniture and do barn raisings and things like that. And yes, that happens, but you also need to take care of these kids that are in this community suffering. And I think it's just ridiculous that people can't get it together and say, okay, for the sake of a child, if I see something is happening or something's wrong, I need to report it to somebody, social service. You know what I mean? Do something about it.
You could report it to Harrison Ford when he shows up, like in the movie Witness, Someone just brought him up, so I thought I would say, the movie Witness. You're stupid. That was another word, right? That meant you were fat or something. What was that? English
remember-
kicked that guy's ass.
I
They
wanted to
couldn't
be
say
Kelly
that.
McGillis so bad.
I remember, I remember when that movie came out and how, this is obviously how sheltered I am. I thought I couldn't even watch it because obviously there's a scene in there that's quite racy.
Don't know much about history. Don't know much biology. Remember they sang that song in the barn? They were sinning right then, singing that song.
That's true.
I love that's a great song, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Cook sang that song. What's his first name? Sam Cooke.
Sam
No,
Cooke.
Sam Cooke was an old-time singer. Yeah, that was who sang a great song. Anyway, Lizzy, I want to ask you something too. I wrote so many questions down, but I when I do this show, it just becomes a conversation. That's the way I really like it. But if I want to ask a question, is there anything you miss about living in that Amish society?
Yes, there is. I miss the basically like the closeness of a community, and obviously not the extras, the bad stuff. But let's say you get together for every other Sunday you have church, but then the Sunday in between you'd get together and we would obviously eat lots of good Amish food. I miss that, and just communicating and talking and
what's some good Amish food? What do they make?
Oh gosh, they make the best pies. Oh my, pies are really, really good.
I knew they were going to have good pies, like and Ida's pies.
Yeah, there you go. my grandmother made the best like custard pumpkin pie that I have ever had. I mean, and she didn't have a recipe, and that's the thing. Some of those things you can't turn down. And she made the best Christmas candy. It was like this candy with cornflakes and Cheerios. Oh my goodness, it was just like the best. I mean,
so you have some good memories of growing up Amish.
I really do. I do, and I want people to know that I do. And I'm not, like I've said, they're not all pedophiles. They aren't.
Right.
There's lots of them. But they're not. And thankfully, some of them, I know in some families, like if quite a few siblings, there's incest going on, it doesn't mean that the whole family is, but a lot of times it tends to obviously spill over and, they all tend to be, but I know some cases where they aren't. They just knew in their mind that something was wrong and that they were like, I'm not going to do that to my sister.
Now your mother, your mem, right?
Mm-hmm,
Is that how
mm-hmm.
You don't know who your father is, right?
No.
And you've never found that out. You've been on a search for that basically your whole life, right? I mean, look. I'm not trying. If I hit you with that question too fast, but it is in the book,
mm-hmm.
and you talk about it. And you're on a search for your birth father. But
mm-hmm.
so, which means your mother had an affair.
No. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Go ahead. Maybe I was wrong then.
No. So she left the Amish when she was in her early 20s, and it was in like the early 70s. And so what she did, she worked at a restaurant and some places, and she kind of lifted up and was pretty wild. And basically, she got pregnant.
She was pretty wild. She left the Amish. What is that? Oh, she jumped the fence. That's what you guys call that one.
Mm-hmm.
I got all these Amish terms now. When I'm gonna go back in the city, I'm going. I may jump the fence tonight.
So that's what she
and
did.
Mix a batch. That's terrible. Terrible. You know what? The other thing I thought was a little bit sad, and some nationalities, some ethnic groups are the same way, and it's not showing affection or not being able to hug and kiss or whatever, within the family, and that could be damaging too.
Very damaging. I mean, I never heard my parents when I was growing up, or grandparents, or nobody told anybody they loved them.
Right.
Or the only affection I seen was when they were babies, and you would hold them. But there was a very strict on how much you can hold that baby, because if you were holding it too much and giving it too much affection, you were spoiling it.
Oh God, that's so crazy.
It's very sad, especially when you obviously get into some love languages. Some kids, if that love language was they needed physical touch, imagine how unloved and unwanted they felt. Or even words of affirmation. You didn't tell your child, good job. You only said, you should have gotten that done faster. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that a psychologist would tell you that is crazy. That's so damaging, like to someone's psyche. And Molly, are you is your ethnicity Irish, or is that through marriage? Your last name is.
I am proudly about half Irish.
So you know what I'm talking about. Irish people don't really like to show affection much either, unless it's just my family. I don't know.
Well, I don't think my family wasn't big on affection. So it's interesting that, there might have been similar, sometimes the mother character was the hardest one to write just because nobody could figure her out. And my mother passed many, many years ago, but there were aspects of Lizzie's mother, not the worst aspects that were similar to my experience, but for example, wanting my mother to touch me, even if it wasn't gentle, just wanting that contact, wanting that physical love, and craving it. So I did go there, although my mother was nothing like Lizzie's mother. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Right. But just the whole thing of the lack of affection is, I'm not saying my mother didn't. My mother was more affectionate than I'm saying, but my father wasn't very much, and to show affection took a great deal of effort, I think,
So imagine you're a 14-year-old girl who's never been shown any affection, and, a man like gently brushes your hair back with his hand, or you feel how warm his skin is. It doesn't matter what's going on. You're going to crave that because it's inside you.
Yes.
Craving.
And I'm sure in the book you're almost like afraid to write that, but it's so true, because
I wanted to really speak about grooming.
Yes.
A lot of the Me Too stuff was happening, but I felt nobody was really ready to talk about the grooming process. And this was the perfect chance to do that.
Yeah, there was so much of that in that community. But, some of the other things that I noticed with your mem also, it seemed like she would go out drinking too and come home hammered, right? With her friend. I was like, oh, they're breaking all these rules, but and then you notice they called it going to the chiropractor. Was that what it was?
Yes.
They had terms for everything. Jumping the fence, going to the chiropractor, was getting hammered. I was like,
she and that was her way of obviously dealing with. I mean, she didn't want to get pregnant with me, and she ended up going Amish and getting married. She didn't want to do that, but she did, and that's the way she was dealing with it. She would go out. I mean, people. She would go to bars and wherever she went. And
how did she go to a bar? She didn't wear her Amish gear, right?
Yes,
she did.
She did, and that's actually, I think that gave her more. How would you say? She gave her a lot more attention. I mean, seeing an Amish woman in a bar, I mean, for sure, you're going to have some people coming over. Oops, there we go.
Right. I got to remove.
Okay,
she's back. She's back. You lost your signal for a second.
Probably, yeah.
Molly.
Yep.
You're back though. You're back.
Yep.
So she would show up at a bar in Amish.
Mm-hmm. And then here's one of the things that I tried to talk about a little bit is how
I can't hear anything.
Molly's not hearing.
But we can hear her.
We can hear you, but you can't hear us.
I don't hear anything.
You're on your phone, right?
Oh, dear.
Can you hear us now?
I can't hear you guys. Should I go back and go out?
Yeah, sign out and come back on. I can even remove you and she can come back on. Okay. Yeah, sometimes that happens. You could lose a signal out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just unbelievable the whole situation, how they keep you in a certain behavior by controlling you, by just controlling you through these. Can you hear us now, Molly?
Yep.
All right, you're back. Look at that. That's how you fix all electronic devices. You turn it off and turn it back on, right?
Right.
Did they teach you that in the Amish world? Oh, you had no electricity.
No. Nothing. Yeah, no.
And I grew up with a rotary phone, so I don't know anything.
You know, I just wanted to, if I may, and we covered the fact that minister, whoever was, he assaulted you 24 times, and I saw you had a in your impact statement, which I thought was like incredible and incredibly touching. But just you wrote, at 14 years old, I was denied a high school education and forced into modern slavery, which is really what it was. And that we talked about before, being a Maud, which was an indentured servant, according to Molly, and she's correct more than I was. So-and-so paid my parents a few dollars a week to live with him and his wife as their domestic servant. And it was my job to wake up before dawn and help them take care of their home, 4 young children, and a farm until after dark. And I mean, this is the perfect storm of how the sexual assaults happen. Being in someone's home, you're a young 14-year-old girl, you know, and you're basically like a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the person's going to think he can do whatever he wants to you, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you bringing up the impact statement. You know, Molly definitely helped me with that, and I'm very grateful that I ended up reading it. And I will say that the judge, when he responded to it, he got emotional 2 times, speaking of it. And I thought it was something I had never even, you know, heard of. But he charged him the best, you know, with what he could. Obviously, the laws in 1989 were horrible. They still are. You know, you get charged more. Yeah, I mean, for certain other crimes than you do for sexual assault crimes. And
well, within your community, they called rape an extramarital affair,
mm-hmm.
according to your impact statement.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I mean,
mm-hmm. And they blame me. They blame me. I instigated it at 14. I instigated it, and I enticed him, which is just absurd to think that you can just turn that and not put any blame, because they're trying to take the blame off of him. And they still did, because they sat, yeah, every time he had to come to court for, you know, plea bargain, all those different stuff, you know, loads of community members, Amish and non-Amish, came to support, and he was a pedophile. I mean, that's exactly what he was.
Well, I want to read one other sentence that you wrote. You wrote, I want to remind you, I was not only a child and a virgin, I was too young to legally consent to anything, let alone sexual relations. And we spoke about, not only was it a rape by force, but it was a rape by something known as infancy, mm-hmm. that you were too young to consent, even though you weren't consenting anyway, mm-hmm. but you were 14 years old, you know, mm-hmm. and that's part of the horrendous nature of this, you know, and that mm-hmm. that you got to the judge and he got emotionally, you know, touched by this situation, but yet the whole religious protection that this gets is horrendous, you know. People in the chat wanted to know, Lizzy, and I think I know the answer to this. When did you leave? And I think you first left at 15, but you left officially forever at 17, right?
Yeah, I left at 17, and then I actually went back for 3 more months when I was like 19, and then left again.
Was that for the pie? You came back because you missed that pie so much?
That's it. That'll be in my next book. So.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Lizzy, do you think there's any way that this could be made into a movie or a TV show? Or
yes, we're trying to find Reese Witherspoon as we speak.
To play Lizzy. I tell you, Lizzy really let her hair down though when she got out of this. I mean, you know, she was wearing that one leopard outfit. I was like, oh my God,
do it all.
You know, I have it up on the screen. It's taking a minute to load. There's your conservative outfit on the screen now, but then you have that little leopard print shirt. I'm saying, not only did she get out of the Amish family, but look at this. Wow, wow, wow. You know?
I got to give this photo credit to Red Canvas. She did an amazing job doing this, and yes, I had to do some of those fun photos. And so yes, thank you for saying that. That is my ultimate goal, because there's so much of my story. I couldn't put everything in the book. I mean, you know, I have so many, different things that happen. So that is the goal, that we will have my life turned into, movie.
Now you got some, when this when you first decided to prosecute your attacker, let's call him your attacker, you got some death threats and some really nasty mail from people in the Swartzentruber Amish sect there, right?
Mhm.
And how did you deal with that? Angela Ang, thank you so much for the $9.99 super sticker. You're the best. You and Joe Murray keep me in French fries. Keep me in Aunt Ida's pies. Thank you so much.
Yeah. The answer to how did I handle it? I basically use, death threats are a little different, but any negative feedback that I get, I just turn it around and use it, that I know I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm hitting a nerve. I know that I'm inspiring people to step out and report their cases and to be more watchful under these Amish children, the little children that are walking to school. They are vulnerable little children. Not all of them are getting abused, but way, way, way too many of them are getting abused sexually, physically, emotionally. We've talked about all that. And it's just, I just encourage everybody, please be more aware and educate yourself. If you choose, this is the Amish kids that choose to leave the Amish, educate yourself and figure out what really, who is a victim, what are the laws, so many things, because it takes years to figure out there's often, I've heard a victim say, well, I really didn't know. Or I've also gotten this where it says, well, I let him do it. Just because you let him do it, you were a child, doesn't.
But you know, Lizzy, that's how they screw up your head, though. That's when we spoke before about Stockholm syndrome, and that is Stockholm syndrome. You're blamed for the crime that's happening to you, and it's so horrible, and because they're also abusing you psychologically, so badly psychologically, and then the sexual abuse is easy because now you don't know which end is up,
very unfortunate. And I wish if they would just, I say, if you want to be Amish, but at least allow your children to be more educated and at least let them have sex education. That is, they're not allowing any sex education. So with no sex education, you know what's happening? It's just brewing. I mean, these kids become pre-teenagers, and they don't know what's going on. Then that's where all this self-exploring and all this stuff, starts happening.
Well, Lizzy, you wrote in your book that at the age of 12, you got your period. You had no idea what was going on, and no one told you. And they would say, "Oh, God is punishing you." I mean, it's like I hear that. I just want to pull my hair out that I don't have anymore. That
and not telling you from there, then okay, at least tell you a little bit about how babies are made, how how do you reproduce? I mean, you know what I mean? Just give you something. And you had to, it was so I'll tell you how sheltered it was when I've heard this many times when some Amish leave the Amish guys, they're unaware that women get their period. I mean, they've never been taught. I mean, in general, I always say the boys know more about reproduction because of living on the farm, being out in the barn and things like that, the cows and the horses. But the girls, we were always completely, at certain times we were not allowed in the barn at all. We were never for sure why, but that was during whatever mating season.
Yeah, but it was weird too that there was almost like a ritual where you guys would have this thing where, I don't know, I'm having just not a total recall of it in the book, but it was almost like what I would compare playing spin the bottle or playing post office as a kid. You would go in a dark area and someone would come in and kiss you or grab you or something. What was that called? Is that jumping the fence or mixing the batch? What's that called?
That is Molly would love to talk about this. This is something that I don't know that anybody's ever published in a book before, but it is about how these young folks at weddings are expected to basically, it's some sort of form of dating, if you want to call it. But yes, it is like this chasing each other around, like you said, kind of and then there's.
But that's sort of allowed too, and that's like a very sexual thing. You know,
Yes.
I just when I was reading, I was thinking of myself as a kid. When I remember in 6th grade, we first started kissing, but we kissed like with our mouth open, like that was like the 6th grade makeout kiss we used to call it, you know. And we play like what was it called, post office, or spin the bottle, you know, and then you spin the bottle in a circle and point to a girl you wanted to kiss, and you go, or in a post office you say pass or fail. I don't know if that's the right game, but anyway, that's what it reminded me of. But I was an Amish, so I could do that.
Mm-hmm. But Molly probably wants to say something about this, but my worst thing about that is that what was allowed is that these married Amish men were supposedly they're monitoring it, but to me it was some sort of ridiculous, like them watching, you know, I mean, next to like porn or something, because they were watching this happen, you know, and they were all cheering and chanting, and you know, it's just
see, that's what sounds so crazy, because like you can't listen to the radio, but you can play this game of sexual abuse, right? Molly, you have any comment on that?
I mean, it took me a long time to just understand. I'd be like, what? Are you sure? Or, you know, I just was like blown away listening to a lot of it. You know, I mean, I just had to wade through this stuff and in disbelief.
But it's like a cultural thing that's come down through the years, that it's not something that this you know, generation of Amish have invented. It's been passed down through the ages, and it's like, but it's really, the whole thing is all based on sexual perversion, right?
Yeah.
It's so, no one, if you didn't uncover this or write this book, no one would even know about this. No one would have any idea that this is the way it is, you know. And it's not, and again, it's not just the Amish community. I'm going to put your book up on the screen. It's on like tape delay here. It's coming up though. It's folks, anyone that would like to buy this book, and as I said, I couldn't put it down when I read it. It's called Behind Blue Curtains. It's a true crime memoir of an Amish woman's survival, escape, and pursuit of justice. And it took Lizzy Hershberger 30 years to get the courage and to have the right person to stand by her in regards to Molly, to be able to write this book. And as I said, when I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. I read the whole book, and you guys watch this show all the time. I get books all the time. I can't read every single one of them because I'd be doing nothing else but reading books. But I really recommend it. It's on Amazon. You can pick it up, Behind Blue Curtains, by Lizzy Hershberger and Molly Maeve Egan. And that's Egan with an extra A. I made the mistake already that I didn't spell it correctly the last time. She's back in. You're back. You keep leaving us. But
literally am trying to help somebody escape a situation. I just tried to find a good Wi-Fi spot, and I pulled over, and it's dark. You know, this is my life. Like, so
well, I was just giving you kudos for helping Lizzy write this book. You gave her the courage. You helped her out with the writing, and the book is a real masterpiece. And I hope one day you could make it into a screenwriter can get a hold of it and write a good treatment for it, you know, and either put it on TV or make it a movie, you know. Just give me a part of it. I'll be like the old Harrison Ford.
Oh my God, we'll give find you something.
Yeah, I'm sure they can find a part for you.
They can find a part for me. I'll say, who wants to jump the fence today?
Well, in the book, it really starts off with me going to the police station. So there's definitely parts for a police officer.
Lizzy, someone in the chat asked, how are your siblings today?
My siblings, all are on a different journey. I'm the only one that has wrote a book. I tell them, all of them have a unique story that can be told. And like I said in the book, that my youngest brother also does not know who his dad is. So they all have stories, all different ones. All are going to have a different perspective, or relationship with.
What, were they all sexually abused?
My brother's not to my knowledge, but my sister was,
Okay.
unfortunately, by the same relatives.
Wow, that's horrendous. We actually just at the hour point, and I usually not that I couldn't stay talking to you for another half hour. It's been my privilege and pleasure to interview you. And Molly, it's been great to have you here also, even though I can't really see you. But I have a picture of you. I know I'll put your picture up on the screen so people will be able to see you.
There I am. Yeah.
There she is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's Molly Maeve Egan. That's Egan with an EAGAN. Right. I messed it up the first time, but that's Molly from Brooklyn. And
it's okay. Yep.
So again, the book is Behind Blue Curtains, and you can get it on Amazon. And I just want to, Lizzy, you have any final words to say to our audience, or anything you'd like to say, or anything you want to plug? You got a new rock and roll album coming out, the Barn Burners, or anything?
Jumping the fence.
Jumping the fence. Lizzy and the 5 fence jumpers, what do you got?
I guess the only thing I'll say is that I am the co-founder of Voices of Hope events, and we do conferences twice a year, and it's just for women. But that's what we kind of do on the side, and I do the victim services volunteering, and I'm just here to help people. If there's anybody that needs to reach out and maybe doesn't know, whether they were assaulted or they, were abused or not, I encourage, reach out to me or somebody, Molly or somebody. There's lots of organizations out. We're here to help and encourage others to find healing. Find what you can do to heal from your, because lots of us have suffered certain traumas and things, and figure out what works for you. And again, I want to thank you, Bill, for having us on. It was a pleasure.
Well, it was really, you're usually not in the realm of people that I reach out to, because we do a lot of cop stories. We do a lot of, but it was a great story. And as soon as I saw your book, I was like, I contacted your publicist immediately. I said, I'll interview her. And I was like, and then you guys got back like 2 days later, which was great. And I'm sure you were as excited as coming on Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories as I was to have you. And it was great. And and you're a great person to be able to put this story out there. You risked a lot putting it out. Even your family didn't know anything about it. And you took lots of risks, and many people will benefit by your courage.
Thank you.
Molly, any final words?
Not really. This was a fabulous journey. Like I loved working with Lizzy. I'm still out here. Like, this inspired a whole movement, and there are lots of people now involved, and we're coming for those plane predators. That's
well, something. All I can say is keep on keeping on, and we all in the Police Off the Cuff family, the Real Crime Stories, really admire you guys. So with that said, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff After Hours, Real Crime Stories. And for Lizzy Hershberger and Molly Maeve Egan, good night, everyone. Thank you so much.